Hello everyone, I am back. And some people asked how I get so much done. Well, every day when I come in, I come up with a task list before I come in of what I'm going to accomplish, hopefully minimally, that day. Sometimes I make it, sometimes I don't. Most times I do. So today, the task was, previously I had assembled the mold, cleaned it and assembled it. Now today's task was spray the inside of the mold with PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, and what it is, it's water-based and it's like watered down Elmer's glue, honestly. You know how when you were a kid, you put Elmer's glue on your hand and you let it dry, and then after it dried you could pull it off and it was like an extra skin? This is pretty much the same thing. The advantage of it is, one, it's water-based, and two, it's water-soluble. So this mold previously has been used for making fiberglass parts, and so it had let's see, semi-permanent mold release used on it and wax used on it. So it's seasoned enough that I wasn't worried about things sticking to it too much. And I found out if I put wax on a mold and then tried to spray PVA, well, PVA is water-based, wax is made to make water bead up, and so all it did was made the PVA bead up. The way around that was to put such a light mist that it was barely there. And it would still bead up, but they were little tiny beads, and you would just keep on putting on little mist coats of PVA until finally all the little beads connected with each other and it isolated the surface, the waxed surface, from the PVA. From that point, then you could spray on PVA. They call it a flow coat or a heavy coat. It's very tedious, time consuming. I decided instead I'm not going to wax the surface or apply semi-permanent mold release. I'm just going to spray PVA on it. Now the disadvantage of that is if you miss a spot with PVA, then you're relying on whatever's on that surface to keep your parts from sticking to your mold. I found out that that's really an issue with epoxy. Apparently epoxy's a lot, we'll call it stickier than polyurethane. And so, polyester, polyester resin. And so if any spot got missed in the least or even was thin, epoxy basically glues the parts together. Polyester isn't quite so adhesive, and so what I put on is polyester Clearcoat. So after I sprayed it with PVA and got what I felt was a good enough coat, then let it dry, and then we put the polyester Clearcoat on there. So that's what you see is on here now, is the polyester Clearcoat. It needs to cure completely before you put any epoxy on it. And the estimate's somewhere around 5 hours. Not sure exactly what it is. Doesn't matter because we're finished for the day. It's 9 o'clock and we'll come back in the morning. So that's more than long enough for this to cure. So in the morning, this will be cured, and then we could start putting on the epoxy. And then once we put on the epoxy, we'll put on the carbon fiber, roll it out, get all the air bubbles out, let it cure for a while until it gets tacky, and then we'll add more epoxy and more carbon fiber. In this case, we are not going to have the exposed carbon fiber as a final product. It will be exposed initially, but we're not going to worry about lining up the crosshatch patterns because we are going to have it finally have a coat of either matte black or flat black, one of the two. We haven't decided which, but it makes it to where it doesn't matter what the carbon fiber pattern is. Now, one option that I have thought about is using black tint in the epoxy, and therefore the pattern of the carbon fiber wouldn't even show. But I don't have any, and I'm not sure it's worth the hassle of trying to get some before I do this. So instead, we'll probably just do it. Plus, I'd like to see how we can do getting a big piece like this and trying to get the carbon fiber somewhat aligned. I don't expect it to be perfect. One of the issues is the stupid tail lights. Those are very tedious to do. They're tedious to do in fiberglass when you're not even worried about any kind of fiber orientation because we're using fiberglass mat. But it was very tedious getting the material around those tail light pockets. Same way with the license plate, not as bad, but still. And gravity causes a big issue because no matter what direction you put it, something is going in the opposite direction of gravity and it causes issues. All right, and that is what we accomplished today. We also did some more coats of epoxy on the back hatch and on the mirrors. We found out the best way to do this is pretty thin epoxy that we're using. And so what we found out is let's just do one side at a time that's horizontal, put the epoxy on that flat side, let it cure, and then move the thing around and keep on moving it around until we do that. It takes somewhere between 4 and 6 hours for the epoxy to get to a point that you can tilt the part and not have it flow. And so that's what we're going to do. But if it takes 6 hours, it means that we can do probably 3 parts in a day. If it takes 4, we could do 4. So let me, while I'm here, walk up and show you what we've got. I think tomorrow I'm going to pick up the shop. I'm tired of walking around stuff. All right, so what we've got here is the back hatch. This is what it looked like before we sanded it to give the epoxy something to stick to. And then we put a new layer of epoxy on it. And again, this is the flat area. So we put it on here and we're letting it cure enough so that we can tilt it and it won't run. When we tried to do it before, if you look at these mirrors, we tried to do them all at once. You can see which side was facing down because a lot of the epoxy ran down to those. Here what we did was we taped up the edges and then only did the part that was mostly horizontal. Same thing here. And it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than we've been getting in the past because there's sags and runs on the areas that were vertical or more vertical. So we're just going to let this cure for a while, and then we're going to go off and flatten it out, level it out, and do these 2 flat sections on each side, possibly up this wing a little bit, but if not, then we'll put it up at an angle to where this is absolutely horizontal. And we'll do this, and I'm thinking this area over here, probably those 2 will be close enough. But you can see what happens here is with this being an angle, we were doing this, some of it ran down and came down here. And so it's got a little bit of a trail here. But when we cover this next area, we'll fill that in. I did some testing, and believe it or not, 1000 grit sandpaper on the DA knocks this stuff down pretty quickly. I didn't think it would do that much, but it worked surprisingly well. All right, so that's it for today. And tomorrow, like I said, we'll continue with this, doing more of it with the epoxy, and then go back out there and start covering the back area. The back area won't be the chopped carbon fiber, it'll be regular carbon fiber. All right, like, subscribe, hit the alert, hit the things if you want to donate. And if you don't like what we're doing, you don't know Jack. Bye.